Absolutely.
These people created time itself. They created civilization from the bedrock of nothing.
Yep. They're the ones who learned how to sacrifice and agriculture and plan for the future.
We wouldn't be here.
Plan for the future.
We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the intelligence and wisdom of these peoples. And
the pure lack of appreciation of that from your ancestors that are the very reason why you are alive today as a young person. It's ridiculous.
Well,
people have zero appreciation. And let's talk about the struggles of TikTok and why we can't seem to grow on TikTok. Or rather, why we can grow, but seemingly we always get banned after.
Well, we always get banned because of the topics. I mean, there's a lot.
No, you're just a bully.
Oh, okay.
Bullying and harassment.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, bullying and harassment about videos on the human body. It's like, and politics. That's. Well, actually, I really don't know the cause for why our TikTok with about 10,000 people got banned. They never give you a reason. Once they decide to ban you, your account is locked. So you can't even see why they were. I have no idea which video was that set them off. It could have been any of them. It could have been one that I recently had posted. It could have been one that I posted a long time ago. It's irrelevant. So the topics that I've noticed every single time that get thrown under the bus is anything having to do with the esoteric or the occult, anything having to do with the human body, especially since this pandemic has started, or anything that has to do with in the realm of politics, specifically if you question politics.
Now, why would big tech not want anybody talking about this? What would this esoteric wisdom and stuff cause in people's minds? What would it do?
Revolutions. It's historically that's what has caused all revolutions. So the revolutions following the Crusades, the revolutions around the era of Napoleon, the revolutions around the Civil War in America, all of which is covered in our book, by the way. So just revolutions in general. Our old archaic ways of oppression were way too physical and allotted too little influence on micromanaging the actions of all people. They didn't have the technology or the means to really do that. It was basically, they either created armies or they had assassins or something. Nowadays, with technology, yes, they are able to track you, but there's so many people talking about so many things at once with people all over the world that it's impossible for them to narrow it down. So they just make it so certain topics are just you just can't talk about them. And especially in the modern era, the big problem we have is mainly government and technology. The governments of the world don't want you to question anything that's going on. They just want you to comply. There was actually
They want you to just be the cog in a machine.
Yeah,
the boss.
Well, that's what the New World Order is all about. Right. And I mean, the New World Order is not a new idea. That's been around for over 100 years. It was just the means of which to establish that, and now we're here, or at the point where they're about to pull the trigger on the final.
I think it's amazing too, the fact that you can honestly, and I actually had a long conversation with Rich on our phone yesterday. Shout out to Rich. Miss Rich.
Yeah.
But literally, you could honestly narrow down just about everything that's going on in the world right now to just a few things.
Yeah.
A few one-liners. And they're nasty one-liners that...
Last 130 to 50 years of history.
Yep.
Just a few events. Maybe 5 to 10 major events which have caused the state of the world in which we're here now.
We could just start spitballing.
Yeah,
I want to bring them. I don't even care if the video gets flagged, but mass psychosis of the populations.
Yep, that's
indoctrination from the education system, and I'll even throw in ideology into that one.
Yeah.
Control through the food and the reliance and dependence on government.
Yep.
Attack on our biology, which is. Water, toothpaste, deodorants, anything that has
pharmaceuticals, narcotics.
That I would put in its own category.
Yeah, that is.
There you go. There's 5.
That's just 5. The focus on sovereignty as an idea, I think a big attack on people. Okay. I think a big attack on people has been information, especially in the last 100 years. It goes back that far. There are people who are alive today that don't even realize that from the beginning of their lives, almost everything they were told was a lie. So if you go back 100 years ago, we're in the 1920s, right? That's where the silent generation was starting to, they were getting out of World War I, and they had the Roaring '20s. So literally, go back 100 years ago.
It's like everything unheard of and unspeakable was always taboo for those generations, and that's why when you try to have conversations with those older generations, they are not willing to have the conversation. Right. They don't want to talk about it.
That's something that's been instantiated in them for a long time.
But think about it this way: if you can't have that conversation with somebody, how are you going to identify the problem and get down to it?
Well, you never will. Exactly. That's the whole point. It's the same way as how the central bank, Federal Reserve of our country just continuously makes money and raises the debt ceiling, but there's never going to be a way to pay back that debt. So the debt will always increase and it'll never be wiped out until the world comes, again, to this new world order idea where let's just wipe out all the debt. We'll put it all under one world government. And that's where it's heading. That's where it's been since the age of Napoleon. If you really want to go back that far, and of course our book talks a lot about this, really, ever since these financial banks and institutions have been trying to gain more power across a whole bunch of different countries, there have been people like Napoleon, Abraham Lincoln, who have, in history have stepped up to say, hey, I want to fight against this system, and then they oftentimes get assassinated or whatever the case might be. The point being that it goes down to money, but again, I talked about this with some of my family recently. What rules money at the end of the day is faith. It's the same with science. And people can't get that parallel. They think science is just logic. It's like, no, you have absolutely no faith in any of the actual data and evidence unless you are hands-on with it.
I have a question for you then. Do you think that, not necessarily money specifically, but rather the function of money, do you think that that's fueling a lot of the issues that we are dealing with today?
Yeah, but that goes back like over 100 years. And I mean, really, if you want to look at the currency system, it's thousands of years, many centuries, I should say. But again, the control of money is the control of the governments, the people. I mean, this whole capitalism versus communism, it's such a joke of a conversation because people don't even get it. They don't understand the system that we're in. A lot of people who are leftists believe that communism is the answer. Communism is a means of never allowing capitalism to ever come again. See, in a capitalistic economy, you can stay capitalist or you can go communist, but once you go communist, you can't go back to capitalist. And the reason isn't because of communism itself, it's because people who are under Marxist indoctrination don't understand how banking or money works in the real world.
Isn't that the same with I could be totally wrong here, but socialized medicine, for example.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can have socialized medicine. It's great. Other people can pay for your medicine for you is essentially it. That's great. You'll be waiting 6 months.
Right.
It won't be instant. And I mean, there's pros and cons to each one, but
So it's a matter of incentive then. If people had a good incentive to work hard and pursue passions, and even if that means eating some shit for the first 10, maybe even 20 years of your life, if you come out on top of the mountain after that, hell, you'll be able to afford any doctor.
In a perfect world, yes. In our world, no, because it just simply doesn't work that way. The banks are all owned by a small group of families. Those families are never going to allow, as long as they're in control, they're never going to allow any kind of leftist or right ideology, political or social or financial. They're never going to allow people to control any of the means of anything.
So in other words, they keep us snapping at each other's throats.
Well, it's the exact same.
They're the ones that hold the true value.
It's the exact same reason why communism has never worked in any country. It's because the thing that communism lacks as a basic understanding, well, number one, who Karl Marx was, who he was associated with, and who paid him. But more importantly, number two, people don't understand that in order for capitalism or communism in their perfect set way, capitalism doesn't work today. There are many evidences for this, and there are reasons as to why. It's because nobody has true capitalism.
Right.
Communism doesn't work today. There are evidences for this, and there are reasons why. It's because nobody has true communism. The reason is because these are just farces. These are fake financial, political kind of puppeteering agendas, which have been purported by families who actually run the whole thing. And it's just, again, it's the creation of Democrats and Republicans fight against each other, football teams fight against each other, red versus blue fight against each other, male versus female fight against each other, white versus black fight against each other. They set the outline, they set the standard, they define the rules, they always have.
That's a disaster.
And then they say, well, go fight each other so that you guys aren't looking at us. So the reason, just to finalize the point, the reason that communism doesn't work today is because people who are under, again, Marxist indoctrination don't understand anything about banking. They don't understand anything about finance. That's not saying that they're stupid or anything, it just means you're looking at an answer which was created based off of ensuring there was no solution. Communism and capitalism, both to some degree, were created so that there was no solution. And maybe a more socio-capitalistic approach is what we need in the future, where it's a good combination of both. But none of those systems are going to progress, and none of them are going to work until the true root of the problem, which is centralized Federal Reserve / central banking. Until that's solved, which is the root cause. It's never going to go away. It does not matter what you do with the money. Capitalism and communism have different ideas of the use of money. That's irrelevant. The production of money, that is the true cause. And that will never be handed over until there is no Federal Reserve, there's no central banking, none of that. Because for people who don't know at home, central banking is just, it's the idea of creating fake money backed by no tangible resources in order to drive up debt so that countries are permanently, forever indebted to the banks. And the Federal Reserve Bank, which is the major central bank of America, is not owned by America. It's called Federal Reserve, but there's nothing federal about it except for the fact that the federal government begs for handouts from the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve is offshore banks which are owned by, again, elite families who have major investments in the overall ownership of these central banks. So somebody has to own these banks. There's because they're private entities, they're private corporations, somebody owns them. And because somebody owns them, that means that essentially these families own the means of producing money within countries as big as America or anywhere around the world. So the way that they've been trying to see, here's the big thing. People don't understand that the current fiat currency system that we have based on money was a Band-Aid that was slapped on by Abraham Lincoln back during the Civil War. This whole entire thing that we have with green paper money, the greenback, which Lincoln invented, that whole entire debacle was created as just a Band-Aid to ensure that we could never have a centralized bank. And instead, they killed Lincoln and made it so that turned into ensuring there was a centralized bank. So it actually backfired. But they used that greenback system as a means to basically tell people, hey, this is like real money. It's not real money. So cash is not real. The money that's in your checking account isn't real. It's all digital numbers anyway. And the way that they're going to expunge and scrub this old system is through the new blockchain cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency and blockchain is going to be the thing that evolves and becomes the new standard. And the reason that they're doing that is, well, for two reasons. One, it's going to, once again, masterfully as these people are, they are going to eliminate and erase the old system, so there's no way for you to have cash to pay for things that won't be seen. They want complete control, they want complete oversight. So that's one means, is to get rid of the old system and establish a new system with newer metrics and newer controls. So a lot of people think, oh man, this is decentralized banking. This is going to be taking power away from the banks. Sure, right now, that's why there's no money in it. That's why no matter how many people as wealthy as Elon Musk get involved with anything, you don't see really, really popular or really highly priced coins like you would with stocks, except for a few, like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, which already have regulations, which already have existed for a longer time. And what do the banks do? If you can't beat them, join them. And if you can't Actually, no. If you can't beat them, own them. That's what they did. So
Wow.
they outlaw it. They cause all these problems, like they're doing with the SEC and Ripple right now. They cause all these problems and these hangups. It's like Coach JV says. What does he say? Something along the lines of, first they resist it and they fight it, then they sue it, they take it to court, they drive all the morale down, then in court they own it and they regulate it. Right. Well, regulated, it just means that they're gonna start taking ownership. Right. I mean, if you're Ripple, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If the government comes knocking at your door and saying you got to regulate it, that means we own you now. Mm-hmm. That's all it means.
Right.
So now they own it, and then they're going to use it. Yep. And that's what they do with everything. That's what they did that with credit cards, Visa and MasterCard and Discovery and Amex and all them.
It's really so much to unpack here. Yeah, I mean, he took us through some serious loops there.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's just one system that people are completely unaware of, is the financial system. It's so important to understand finances and where they come from and stuff. But there's you named like a whole shit ton of ones too. Food, water, drugs. Everything is attacked on purpose to subjugate and keep the masses down.
It's interesting too because you have people just at home trying to get by, and they can't. Because of so much of all this disarray from these big topics, there's a ceiling of them. They can't seem to break out of it.
They put themselves there. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to say it honestly.
Right, yeah.
Now, I can't blame people for... I know that we as a collective, we've generalized or stereotyped older generations because of the world that we live in now. The unfortunate reality is that people who are older, who are not willing to change, are getting really, really screwed right now. Health-wise, financially. I don't even think people are understanding what's going to happen over the course of the next 5 years.
I remember what I was going to say. I want to come back to your thought, but before I forget, it's interesting how people can... there's like a lack of adaptation for these things that are changing. They kind of... it forces them to... they're unable to acquire these new ideas and use them to fuel the change that they need in their life.
You know what happens if you put fleas in a box? Have you ever heard this? Mm-hmm. This has been shown on labs. You take fleas, you put them in a box. Fleas that have just grown up outside anywhere in the wilderness. You take them and you put them in a box, and then you you supply the fleas with what they need to breed and live and die and everything. And after a few generations, you wait a couple weeks or whatever the lifespan of a flea is. If you open up that box, none of the fleas will jump out of the box, on purpose at least. None of them. They will all believe that ceiling that was put there is the ceiling. So those fleas will be born into a box. The box is all that there is, and they will jump and hit the ceiling of that box, and nothing, even after you remove the ceiling, they don't know that there was a ceiling. That's what's happened in America. Wow. Okay, so over the course of the last 150 years, they put all the people in a box and they put a cap on it, and they said, there's nothing beyond that cap. You can't think outside the box. Well, unfortunately now, you have people who are, like you said, there's that ceiling. It's the same thing. There is no adaptability because there was never any means to learn how to adapt. A lot of people in generations are very similar. Our generation is probably the one where there's more diversity than ever before, and I don't mean racially or anything like that. I mean in interest, topics, and hobbies. Back in the baby boomer days and the Gen X days, it was all homogeny. Everybody did and said and believed the same things. So now we're at a point where we shouldn't be doing that anymore because it proved that those people, unfortunately, did not know any better because not their fault, they were put in a system.
Yeah, that's why we as a society, and even as a species, we need to start putting value in other people, in our neighbors and in our friends and in those that are deemed trustworthy. And yes, you are going to have to take that risk, but if that means that you helping your friend out, like, I don't know, clean his car or something, and then the friend gets you back on something, buys you a beer at the bar or something like that, or whatever it might be. It's like that sense of like community, I think. Almost like the barter system where, hey, you have some of this, I'm gonna have my cake and share some with you, you're gonna have your cake and share some with me. Next thing you know, we have 3-4 different desserts here from 4 or 5 different people.
Yep.
And
so community is super important. It depends on what community you're a part of.
Mhm.
I would argue that that's even more so important because you can get the right ideas by being completely by yourself. Now you have to use tools and resources in order to get the proper ideas. But most people who oftentimes go that path of the loner to find out the truths for themselves, such as how we all kind of done
Did
that
in one way or another.
that's how you epitomize the true concept of building a community. The problem is, once you have such a reliance on community and people don't know any better, then they just become super codependent. And that becomes a big problem.
That's crazy. So it's like, so how... Well, I mean, there's a balance.
There's a balance. I want to touch on what you said about the ceiling. The
Yes,
removal.
continue.
The reason that we're different is because the removal of that ceiling, which was the internet, and this is where especially over the last few years, I've grown a lot more empathetic to older generations. Older generations did not have. Well, they did, but I'm going to get to that. Older generations did not have the versatility or the power that the internet provided. Now, that comes with the caveat that they did have that since the 2000s, since in the 90s, since the 80s,
Right.
but they never adopted it. That's the unfortunate reality.
And so I think...
They adopted it when everybody was forced to because everybody had a cell phone, and now all the boomers are on Facebook and millennials are not.
Let's expand on this more because I think... So the internet, let's look at the internet subjectively, I think that would be right, but it's information. But what else is it? It's connection.
Misinformation.
It's
information, misinformation, propaganda,
yeah.
evidence, communication, culture. I mean, culture is probably the biggest one, and porn,
propaganda,
and pornography.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like 80% of the internet. And that's the unfortunate.
That's a big thing right now too that Tom and I were talking about, or I think it was Tom and I. And this is a quote from Jordan Peterson. He said something along the lines of, there are more men alive today that can see an infinite number of naked women on the internet, and he says we don't know what effect this is having on us, and it can't be a good one.
You and I have seen more naked women than the last 6, 7, 8 generations of men in our family.
Right.
Combined. Combined.
Yeah.
Combined. I mean, you're talking your great-great-great-great-grandfather all the way back to that. You take all those men, you combine them together. You've seen more women.
You know what? It's a desensitizing.
It is
in a way.
It is. I honestly hope that it desensitizes people to not care about getting off as much because that's just detrimental to society.
Right.
Statistically, evidence shows that the more Sodom and Gomorrah, the more society is hypersexualized, the faster it declines, degrades, and gets destroyed over time.
Rome
is
Check out the book.
Check out the book. Rome is a great example because Rome was at the height of sexual degeneracy, single mother households, etc. During its fall. That was one of the biggest reasons as to why it fell.
Wow, it's interesting that no one ever talks about that.
Well, it's not just comfort. Comfort is one of the bigger reasons as to why cultures like that are blamed for failing, and it wasn't completely political. Although of course you can't not blame the politics, but no, it was more of a cultural thing. They grew comfortable. They thought they were the peak of civilization. They thought they were the greatest country in the world, as Americans often do. They thought they could do anything with no consequences or repercussions. They were brought into a system which, again, the Caesarean Empire put everybody in a box, took all of the natural, Hermetic, Gnostic wisdoms of the time, all the Greek and philosophical wisdoms, they expunged them, they threw them away, and then they said, you have to follow the doctrine, you have to follow the education system, you have to follow this, you have to follow that, and within 50 years, the whole country fell. Go back 50 years ago from now, we're in the 70s, so right around the 70s we had that sexual deviation, all the rock and roll, hippie bands and everything, which weren't bad. Yeah. There was nothing really wrong about that awakening movement. The problem was that it got hijacked. The problem is that
got steered in a totally another direction.
Just like everything, just like Black Lives Matter and feminism and anything
that did have
a semblance of a positive cause, eventually gets hijacked, and then it gets indoctrinated with progressive liberalism, which then ultimately leads to destruction.
It's down.
And that's actually, so to bring up a personal favorite, that's part of the balance of at the end of Gurren Lagann, the show, where the bad guy is saying, if you continue to evolve, you're basically going to evolve into nothingness. There's going to be nothing. There is no finish line at the rate that you're evolving, because you're progressing too quickly while not giving a shit about tradition. Whereas the main character, the hero, says, no, we care about tradition just as equally as we do about the future. That's
chills right there.
That's
because if you go on a timeline and you slowly lose tradition along this path,
right,
and yet
you forget.
You don't even know where you've been.
You forget what mistakes you've made.
Yep.
You forget what your fuck ups were.
Yep.
That's exactly
As
what
a
it is.
species.
As a species, not just as a community or one or two people. But you're talking as an entire species.
That is profound.
So the importance of tradition is a chapter that's in the book, which details this, because that's the problem with with kids today. The problem with kids today. I'm slamming the fucking counter again. The problem with kids today. The problem with millennials and Gen Z, the reason that they sit there with their blue hair and their millions of piercings and their tattoos
and their
vape and they're like, oh man, fuck these old people, they don't get shit. Well, yeah, you're right, but the old people are also right when they say it's these kids today that's the problem. You want to know why? Because the old people care way too much about tradition. Gen X and baby boomers are going to go down in history, especially Gen X, as some of the worst generations this country's ever seen. You want to know why? It's because they constantly pushed back on trying to progress the country in a positive way, which created rebels in the 80s and 90s and 2000s and etc., which only wanted to push towards progressive liberalism, which again rejects everything about tradition, rejects everything about all the mistakes we've ever made, and continues to make massive egregious mistakes today. So you have these two sides of the coin. You have the right and you have the left, or however people want to justify it in their mind, the old and the young, it doesn't matter. It's the tradition and it's the progression towards better ideals. Yeah. It's a fine line. People want to pick a side like a football team.
When really they need to kind of bridge the gap.
We need to learn from the past. You're talking about people, again, human history is not 6,000 years old. It's probably closer to like 200,000 years old, realistically speaking. We've had cataclysms, we've had societies crumble, we have evidences of our archaeological findings that go back to about 18,000 years, okay? So if you really want to talk about hard evidence, 18,000 years worth of history is a lot. Think about how much time goes on in a year. Now you're talking 18,000 of those, okay? To assume that all of the ancient traditions didn't know jack shit and they were all just monkeys eating berries and shitting on each other and throwing rocks and stuff, that's stupid. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's completely stupid.
Absolutely.
These people created time itself. They created civilization from the bedrock of nothing.
Yep. They're the ones who learned how to sacrifice and agriculture and plan for the future.
We wouldn't be here.
Plan for the future.
We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the intelligence and wisdom of these peoples.
And the pure lack of appreciation of that from your ancestors that are the very reason why you are alive today as a young person, it's ridiculous.
Well,
people have zero appreciation for that.
So, and that's really what the drawback is between
where's your gratitude? Like where's your gratitude as you sit at home all day vaping, playing your game, dyeing your hair, spending all these resources, like when you have the capabilities of creation, you have the internet, sure, you might be involved in some of that to a degree, but when are you going to start to sacrifice some of your degenerate actions for the greater good of society?
Through history, it has been proven that when we have a society as comfortable as ours, it's through force. So force is going to be, you're not going to have a couch or a TV or a vape or a bomb or a beer can to sit on. It'll happen.
That's all going to get taken away if you don't straighten your fucking act out.
The problem is they're not going to straighten their fucking act out, and instead it is going to get taken away, and then they're going to cry and ask, how did this happen? Oh, why? Oh, how could we possibly have let this happen? And by then, they're going to be in chains, and there's not going to be anything they can do about it, because it's going to hit hard and it's going to hit fast. Those people, they've already been affected by it. There are some people who really didn't do research and decided to get medical procedures, as I'll say, when that was not the right thing to do, unfortunately. And they'll fight you. They don't care.
Right.
Like, they'll fight you.
They're so deep in their ideology.
They're deep in the box. They're deep in that ceiling. There's no way that the medical industry could possibly be wrong. There's no way the governments would lie. It's not like they've ever done that before. Lie like they do all the time.
They have your good interest in mind. Always. They only want what's best for you. They're here to protect you and have your back.
Imagine believing that. Like imagine.
So many people do though.
So let's take a look at American. No, you're right. But let's take a look at American society as a whole. Okay. Some of the highest divorce rates, the one of, if not the highest, in prison obesity is what I was going to say. We all know that our food and water is poison. We all know that we can drink and smoke cigarettes and do a shit ton of drugs here in the United States because they are very easily accessible regardless of whether or not they're illegal or not. The financial industry is a joke because everybody knows that this market that we have is bullshit. And can be easily manipulated by a group of teenagers buying GameStop and AMC stock. So there's that. Our government's a joke. Everybody knows that our politicians are the ass of the world. So what exactly makes us the best country in the world? We're over-sexualized.
It's the facade of the fucking hedonistic pleasures that society indulges themselves in.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go get my Starbucks in the morning. I'm gonna have this muffin. I'm gonna have my Chipotle for lunch every day. I do like Chipotle, but
I'm gonna have my McDonald's.
Exactly.
Today's Friday. I'm gonna go get drunk on Friday because I can justify it. Why? Because I worked all week, slaving away at a corporation for 40 hours of my life, not contributing to society. Everybody who makes six figures on a high level, what are they really doing for society? And I don't mean everybody, I mean most. All right, most people within the borders of America who make a six-figure income are not making the world a better place.
But Matt, those are the people that somehow still hold the tradition because they have families and they go to their 9 to 5 and they're
also older. I don't know a lot of blue-haired liberal people who are 25 years old that make six figures. Sorry, it just doesn't happen. Because if you play into the tradition, you're often more times allocated towards that financial role.
Right.
If you're predated towards poverty, then you go liberal. I mean that's so wealthy is right because it's tradition. It's we know this works, so we're going to keep doing it because people are stupid and they won't wake up. The left oftentimes, I'm doing the wrong sides, but the left oftentimes is the side that is I'm poor, I need help.
Yeah. I'm not going to try, help me.
Yeah, well, that's one aspect of it, yes. But really what it comes down to, if we want to say right and left, or alt-right and alt-left, or conservatism and liberalism, or, I don't know what you'd say, racism and progressivism. Because honestly, people don't do this and they need to start conflating the racist, sexist tendencies on the right with the over-progressive, societal destructive aspects of progressivism on the left.
Yeah.
If you're going to sit there and mock people and put people down, as you should, for being racist and sexist and yada yada,
then you should do the same when kids are being...
Well, progressivism is completely centered around racism and sexism. All of the aspects of progressivism.
It's so dark, and I love Rich because he uses this phrase. It's like Machiavellian in nature because it is
draconic.
It's draconic. It is what it is. Everything that it says it's against.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly.
It's awful. So we're gonna protect kids in the name of kids, or
we're gonna protect children by teaching them what anal sex is at 5 years old.
Yeah.
Because that's important. Because a child needs to know. Because a child needs to know. They need to know what gender they are. They need to decide on the spectrum of 100 different genders. Let alone the fact that they got to be a person and do taxes and understand their emotions. Instead, they still got to go through puberty and everything else.
And indoctrinate them and brainwash them while they're young. Sway them. You know, these kids are like putty.
Yeah.
And like, yes, nurture versus nature. We know the whole spiel there, but you can... theoretically nurture them to be anything you want to be, and that is a very, people can use that for very evil things.
Right. So I mean, it comes down to tradition versus progressivism. So you have the future versus the past, and what's most important, the present. So what it means is we need to instead of conflating these imaginary ideas around the future, we need to consolidate everything into a timeline where we're all in the present moment, and we need to understand that we can work towards progressive ideals, but we need to look at tradition, we need to look at evidence, we need to look at society, we need to look at the fact that maybe it's not intelligent to start telling children that they can and cannot believe whatever they want to believe is real. You can't do that. Obviously, that's being used as a means to attack children.
And you're
people don't get that, then you don't get psychology.
And then you're taking the freaking magic that it is to the magic out of someone's life of what it means when they're young and how they experience the world.
Yeah, they're flooding these kids with anxiety so that they are better conformed in this box. The sooner we hit them with something, what are you going to tell kids? No, really. How can we make children anxious from the youngest age possible?
Make them question everything.
Well, yes, that's exactly it. But children already do because they don't know anything. What do kids know? That's what they went for. What do children know? Well, they can tell certain things about their body. Their parents are more than likely going to tell them, you're a boy, you're a girl, you were born that way. Well, what if we just muddle that? What if we confuse that? In other words, if we make it so that from a young age these kids are questioning everything, then they're never going to trust anything. They're always going to go and do basically whatever that they're told by the people who also told them, hey, you're welcome. We told you that you could choose.
What do you say to the idiots that say, there's nobody forcing these ideals, there's nobody propagating any of this?
Well, I would ask the question that Rich asked. Why is it so important that these 5-year-olds learn about sex, anal sex, vaginas, penises? Why is that so important to you? Why is it so important that you think that these kids need to learn about that? Did you learn that at that age? Did you learn all about sex at 5 years old? Do you think that would have changed you as a person if you did? I'm sure there are some people. I learned about sex when I was 7. I can tell you that fucked me up for a few years because then my parents got a divorce. Then I believed that sex was the root of all evil when it came to marriages. And I mean, I was actually right.
I think it's pretty good that we'll be releasing this video a day or two after yesterday.
Well, yeah. What?
Yeah. I think yesterday was like...
What happened yesterday?
There was some it's trans day or something.
Yeah. Okay, is that because of the bill that got passed?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Well, anyway, look, I could care less about what people want to teach their own kids,
or what they want to. And, I don't want people to take what I just said there like completely out of context.
No,
I don't care what people do with their bodies. I'm saying leave the kids out of it.
Well,
okay,
they don't see that. See, here's the problem: is if you say I don't care what people do with their bodies, they're going to tell you that kids should be able to do whatever they want with their bodies. But if you had a child that came to you and said, I want to chop off my arm because I think I'm a space ranger, and I want to put a cannon on my arm, you'd probably look at them like you're just a stupid fucking kid. I'm not going to listen to you because that's dumb. Okay, because that's what most parents who actually know what they're doing do. The problem is you have people who suck into this ideology so hard.
Those parents, they're the worst. They're the real ones.
They should never have kids. But anyway, they will just believe whatever they're told, and they'll okay, well the TV said so I guess this is the case. You should start questioning your gender. You're 4. You don't know where you're at in life.
Exactly. It's like those parents, like what a lack of. Yeah, like, do you care about your own life? Do you care about your understanding of the world and around you? Do you give a shit about any of that?
Okay, so I've said this before and I'm going to say it again. People who do things, and I'm prefacing this, I'm not attacking anybody who does it. I'm pointing this out so that people understand themselves better because, trust me, I know you better than you. I'm an expert with psychology and I've cracked the human codes. I've cracked the secrets and the codes of what it means to be human. By the way, get the book. So when people do things, like if they're on social media and they put he/him, they/them, she/her, but they're not trans, they're not going through any of that. That is the number one indicator that those people have nothing going on in their lives. You want to know why? Because those people are using those types of things. BLM, they'll put that in their thing. I've seen people put anti-racist, like as if nobody, like everybody except for racist
people tagging their profile picture if they've had certain medical procedures done.
Certain medical things done, yeah. I got this. I got my free Krispy Kreme donut.
I got my $100 bill.
Why do people do that? It's because they know they don't do enough for society. Internally, subconsciously, they know, shit, I don't do enough for society. I don't want other people.
What can I do for society? Let me turn on the box. Tell me what to do.
Yeah. So I don't want people to think in my life that I don't do anything for society. I don't want people to think that I'm lazy or that I'm racist or that I'm sexist because that's what the Magic TV box told me is the worst thing in the world. So what am I going to do? He/him. Send. I am a fighter. I'm an activist now. That's what people do. And you want to know why? It's because they got nothing going on in their lives. If people took a step back and actually looked inwardly and they said, What do I want to accomplish? What kind of real change do I want? Well, you know what? I want there to be less suffering in the world. Well, how do I accomplish that? See, people get that far and they say, I can't figure that out. I don't know what to do. Well, everybody has skills. Everybody has something beautiful that they know or that they can do or talents. Every single person, no matter where you come from or who you are or whatever. Every single person.
This book has a lot of positive things in it, especially towards the end.
A lot of negative things too in the middle.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you make it through it, you will see the light at the end of the tunnel. I promise you, it is worth the read.
You have to go through the darkest parts of the tunnel if you want to be able to see the light, right? You can't see the light unless you're in darkness. So you have to point out what the darkness is in order to expose the light. That's really what it comes down to. And yeah, absolutely. And well, again, the problem is that people don't do enough. So that's where a lot of this progressivism comes from. See, the people on the traditional side often get categorized as being shittier people. And I'll even throw in that, yeah, a lot of them are. I mean, people who are on the right side of the spectrum who are like pure capitalists who only want to make money and they don't give a shit about anything else. They don't give a shit about society. They only care about them and their little family. I mean, you can care about just your family. There's nothing wrong with that. But when it gets to a point where you're not contributing to the world in some way. Yep. Maybe you want to go off and you want to fuck off and live in the woods with your family and you never want to like worry about anything ever again. I honestly don't blame those people. They can do whatever they want. They're not really contributing to society, but they're also not taking away from society. You understand? Yeah. So if you're going to live in society, which 99.99999% of people do, then you have to contribute. Going and getting a job is not a contribution to society. That is a contribution to a capitalistic system, which only wants to kill you. Okay, it wants you to work, get stressed, eat shitty food, drink, and then get sick
and die.
That's what the whole system is based off of. Because guess what? They make money when you die. So the point I'm getting at is, yeah, the right side for sure has problems when it comes to that. They a lot of people, if you really want to boil down, they lack some empathy here and there. Whatever. Okay, they're not contributing to the destruction of society as much as the progressives on the left are. And the reason for that is because progressives on the left, this is the real mental illness of progressive leftists. Because I just talked about the mental illness on the right. They lack empathy. That's mentally ill. Okay? Yep. The mental illness on the left, which is evidenced to contribute more to the falls of society, far more than the right, is that the left basically lacks empathy for themselves. Okay, and because they lack empathy for themselves, unlike the right, they lack empathy for everybody. So it comes down to, well, I know I'm not doing enough because I'm lazy and all I do is I get fat and I dye my hair blue and I get a million piercings and then I bitch about all these ideas that have been flooded into my brain about what it means to be a good person, and everything that's opposed to that means you're a bad person. I was told this, I'm going to believe it because that makes me feel like a good person because I already believe all this stuff. But now I actually have to do something. What do I have to do? As long as I can do something to make myself feel more fulfilled, because I don't do anything. So what does that mean? I'm going to put he/him. I'm going to call you a racist if I disagree with even a semblance of anything that you are. You want to know why I'm going to call you a racist? I'm going to attack you first as quickly as I possibly can off of no evidence. It's because I have to set the stage that I'm a better person than you. Because I'm insecure. I don't know what's going on in the world. I have no fucking clue. But as long as I call you a racist, that means I called you first, I punched you first, you are the racist, I'm the good guy.
I'm the victim.
I'm the victim and the good guy at the same time. I'm the victim and the good guy. You can't do shit. Because you want to know why? Because I just saved society.
Honestly, Matt,
I just saved society.
You've got it all figured out.
I have it all figured out.
Yeah, honestly, thank you for sharing with me. I love listening to you when you go on these tangents because it is truly enlightening, and I hope that those watching at home can honestly draw a lot from this because I sure did.
Yeah. Well, again, the big problem is we need to have more conversations. I never said that conservatism or liberalism is not the answer, or is the answer, or is the major problem. They're both the problem. Both sides don't want to come to the center table.
Sort it out.
Both sides don't want to sort it out, and again, that's because both sides are indoctrinated. Both sides are propaganda. None of them are actually real. They're all friends. All the politicians on the right and the left all go to dinner with each other. They all sit around and they drink wine. They talk about how you and I are stupid because we don't know anything. Meanwhile, While they're doing
Meanwhile, we have conversations like this.
well, that, and we also wrote one of the greatest books that has ever been written. So, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Comment down below what you think. Go follow us on social media, and go get our book. And if you don't want to get our book because it might be too expensive for you, go check out our merch store because we've got a lot of great things there. You can consider supporting us on Patreon as well. As always, we love you guys. Really should consider getting this book. It'll expose a lot of truths for you.
Check out our new TikTok at Psycosmos Wisdom.
Yep.
One word. We've been posting a lot of content there about the book, the pictures in the book,
Yep.
more information about that. A whole bunch of stuff to look forward to, guys.
Thanks, guys. We love you. Take care.
We gotta get Matt on the stage.